Hi, guys. Thank you for joining. This is Essence of Science, and today we're talking about aging. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence. So, aging is something um, that's somebody called aging a retrograde development. What means is that part of the problem when we get older, we are no part of growing up is acquiring abilities, and part of aging is losing abilities. Now, that part makes sense to lots of people my age because I could never do things I used to do when I was younger. And and I'm sure you have, Amanda, observed aging process in your family, parent, grandparent, and so on. How would you describe aging process in them?
Aging is something that you get to do if you're lucky.
Oh, that is a good way. That's a philosophical Amanda's way of looking at that. And as well, I think I have heard that uh, before. That a young foolish man says his father, "Oh, look at you! You're old. I'm young," and the father says, if you are lucky, you get old. Because if you're not lucky, you die young.
Right.
The only two alternatives. So, but how would you? On the scientific part and so on, how would you define aging?
Well, I'm really close to my grandma. So I think I would define it as the luckiest torture that you can receive because aging really does have, like, it's lucky that you get to do it, but it does take a lot from you. Like, just in the last 6 years, I've observed my grandma aging a lot. And I just started reading this book. I can't remember what the title is. I just started it this week, but actually, they interviewed a lot of old people, or elderly people, and they said, like, what was the best year of your life? A lot of these people surprisingly said 82 was the best year of their life. But I would say that aging is kind of like, from an outsider's perspective, because I haven't gotten to age much, obviously. So, from an outsider's perspective, I would say it's almost like watching someone revert.
Yeah, that is exactly, retrograde meaning backward development. What aging is like, there's a meme on internet that says, at the 1 year old, you're happy when you can walk, and what 2 years, you're happy when you can talk. At about 5 years, you're happy if you can literally play. At 10, you're happy if you have friends. At 20, you're happy if you can drive. At 30, 40, you're happy if you have a good job. At 50, 60, you're still happy if you have a good job. At 70, you're happy if you can drive. At 80, you're happy if you have friends. At 85, 90, you're happy if you can walk. And when you get close to 100, you're happy if you can keep your thoughts and your language skills.
Yeah.
So it's sort of,
But
you you lose them in the sequence you acquired them.
yeah, but also, what, like, the beginning of your life is one of the most important determining factors of the end of your life, actually. It
Yes, very true.
the amount of time that your parents spend nurturing you and giving you different skills actually will have a huge impact on the end, like your last days of life.
Now, if you remember, we have this video online, part of our collection. It's called A Natural History of Spine, where we talk about your musculoskeletal system, meaning that, when you're a child, you have to play, you have to do things, not overdo it, but you have to do enough that you build up capacity in your musculoskeletal system. Because you remember at what age we have our peak of flexibility and so on? At what is
Yeah,
it? What do
like
you remember?
14.
14. But then your mental capacity to control those muscles, they accumulate up to in your 20s, meaning that the gymnast, their peak is in their 14s, teens. the football player, basketball player, the peak is in their early 20s. But then after that, you lose. Higher you get, the more volume of capacity you have to lose, meaning that you're pushing the endpoint farther out, more capacity you accumulate. And it is no different with our other capacities in life, like our language. If you have a very rich language, if you know multiple language, if you have lots of plays, you accumulate a lot of abilities. If you have a lot of hobbies, all of that contribute. What you start, it's like a reservoir. And if your reservoir is bigger, it takes longer for you to get to a point that you're struggling.
But and we've talked about this in depth and we can talk about it more today, but one thing that we really haven't talked about before on our podcast is more of like the mental side of aging when it comes to an adolescence. Like, for example, if you're a toddler or a young child with really poor impulse control, you kind of are more likely to have health issues in the future. Like if you have low impulse control as a 5-year-old, you're more likely to get into drinking, smoking cigarettes, things like that as you age. And then by the time you're 40, your cancer rate, like the risk of having cancer is much higher. All of your
Because you accumulate, but you just defined it. If you have a problem with impulse control, you are more likely to drink, smoke, and so on. Certainly, that will cause then the side effect of smoking and drinking, which is liver problem, cancer, and so on. You're absolutely right about that. But this is not just mumbo jumbo. They did those studies. They did a very interesting test. They put actually a bunch of 4 years old or 3 years old in front of a marshmallow. And they said, you can eat the marshmallow, but if you wait until I come back, you get 2 marshmallows. And they divided these kids in two groups. Kids who could wait for later reward and then get 2 marshmallows, and kid that, I mean, imagine you put a little kid with a marshmallow, is a hard thing to do. Kid that couldn't control their impulse, and they followed them in their life. Those that could control their impulses, they were all more successful, no matter how you would look at them, at job, university, grades, and so on and so forth. So this is not mumbo jumbo, it's scientifically proven. Now, as well, you remember we talked about aging is to be a retrograde development.
Yeah.
If you are more mature 5-year-old, it's more likely that when you are 85-year-old, you're still more mature then. But if you are a poorly developed 5-year-old who just can't sit in front of a TV and there is nothing else you can do, it's more likely when you get in the older age, when you are at that same level, that you revert to the same kind of overall status. This says a lot about if you care about your kids, make them already early on very diverse. Fill the reservoir with experiences, games, activities, make them all around. And I cannot emphasize it more. Try to teach your kids at least another language. Their brain works so much better when they understand this concept that we call language, communication. It comes in different flavors. All that is like a very liberating experience for the brain to understand that you can actually, English is not, or this what you, we don't, when kids grow up, they don't know they're talking English, but that there is another concept of communication, and it is okay, and they're not the same. Like you don't convey the same feeling with the same word in a different language, or it's not just a one-to-one translation. Like one meaning, one word have 5 meaning in one language, but each of those meanings have different word in a different language. This concept just wires their brain in a way that liberates them. So if you want to make your kids geniuses, teach them, let them grow up as if you can with multiple languages.
And to add on to the early childhood development when it comes to communication, it's really important to talk to your children as if they're a human, like as an adult, kind of. You can't, it's not a good idea to talk to your children in baby talk or slowing things down too much.
Mhm.
It's good to allow your children to be a part of like adult conversations at the dinner table, actually encouraging them to be a part of it, not just a spectator.
Okay, what age are we talking about? Because the baby language has a function. There's a reason we do that. Now, the baby language is literally when they are up to 2 years old, you trying to teach them the sounds that and so on and so forth. You trying to dumb the language down so they can acquire the sounds. But once they have acquired the sounds, you're absolutely right. Enrich their lives with I wouldn't say adult conversation, but with meaningful, with rich conversation, because it comes all back to that. They are building a reservoir.
What I'm talking about is conversation. So,
Yeah.
like making your kid ask another person questions, making your kid know how to have a conversation,
Mhm.
because then once they're 80 years old and all of their friends have died, they still need to know how to have these conversations to build new relationships or maintain less strong relationships. Because, for example, my grandma, a lot of her relationships that she had were family friends or friends that were like her and my grandpa together. So when my grandpa passed away, a huge part of her social circle was gone. And it's not just because people are dying. A lot of her friends are dead and all of her siblings are dead. She's really lonely. But part of the reason why she's lonely is she was never in the position to be put out there where she has to build these relationships on her own. So I think that's something you can't undermine the importance of that.
Yeah. And as well, certainly communication is important, but as well the richness of the language. And again, that is not mumbo jumbo. The amount of the vocabulary, and if you have two languages, you have twice the vocabulary, as easy as that. You accumulate that translate in number of the synapses in your brain. Physically, literally, you build more synapses and connection in your brain. And when you get older, one of the effect of old aging process is that you lose not only neurons, but synapses, connection. And if you start higher, you have way more capacity to go before you become something that what we call we see unfortunately lots of our elderly that we call that aging process, dementia, and so on. Different category of dementia. There are some kind of dementia that are genetic, but there is a natural dementia that comes as well with just the aging process, and
Well,
you
and
can
a
fight it.
lot of dementia also comes from our activity, like our life that we're living right now, the things that we're eating, the amount of sugar that we're eating, our oral health, all of that does actually increase your dementia risk.
Your general nutritional status and your general health status is definitely a factor in the I mean your brain health is not disconnected of your natural health in any other way. So yeah, that is all plays a role. We are a holistic being. We are not a separate being or
Right, but what I'm saying is it's not random. It's not just, oh,
true.
I'm 60 years old, now this is going to happen. I'm 70 years old, now this is. No, it's I've done these things in my life that are adding up to this.
Okay. But let's talk about this is the essence of science. All of that is true, and we should do another one in the essence of life about the psychological effect of the aging and how we can improve that. But let's talk about the science of aging. What do you understand scientifically why we age?
We're putting wear and tear on our body.
Yes, that is a not quite scientific term for it, but it's the accumulation of wear and tears. But on the molecular level, I think we have understand now more than ever we understood before, which is an oxymoron. We always understand now more than ever before. But there is, at the end of our chromosomes, there is a repeating pattern. We call that telomere. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I couldn't explain it.
Well, you see, in the nature, the way we reproduce is a woman and a man come together. Each of them give a 23 chromosome. Those chromosome sets come together. They make a full set of chromosome, and then the child is born. And we mix them. They're even when a man and a woman are getting together, just the number of the chromosome that they mix is more than there are stars in the universe, because we have 23 chromosome. Each chromosome has a 50% chance, 1 in 2% chance to get passed on, each chromosome, and we have 23 of that. Same with the woman. So the actual number of the combination of a man and a woman's genetic material is 2 to the power of 46. If you want to put them together, it's a ginormous number. But all of that requires these chromosomes in the process that we call meiosis to separate, replicate, and separate. Now, mistakes always happen at the end of the chromosomes. For that reason, nature gave us a tool. It put a lots of repeating nonsense at the end of our chromosomes. So if the mistakes happen there, they have less impact on survivability of the children. So lots of nonsense at the end. And it is known that obviously, well, by the way, hopefully everybody understand the entire me and entire you is made of a single cell. You understand? We understand that, right? That one single cell that you can barely see made entire you, Amanda. And that cell has to replicate a lot of time to make all the trillions of cells in your body, correct?
Yeah.
So all those replicating requires each of our chromosomes to replicate. And then and even before we are born. So by the time we are born, we grow, meaning that more replication. But then all our body has to replace the cells. Like, did you know the entire lining of your stomach and the guts changes every 24 hours? Did you know that?
I did.
Did you know that your entire liver cells changes within 3 months to 6 months, something like that?
Yep.
Or your entire bone, the cells and so on, they replicate, they change. Practically within few years, there are very few things that are still original from when you are born. After like 10 years, almost everything is new. All the atoms are new. Most of the cells, the neurons are very few things that remain the same. Everything else changes. But guess what? All of that requires replication of the cells, right? And you remember we talked about that at the end of each chromosome, there are lots of those nonsense cells, sequences that they're mistake. The telomere gets shorter. And there is this good understanding when the telomeres get shorter, again, then the nonsense, the bad thing that can happen during the replication may actually affect not only the nonsense end, because that is gone, but actual cell. So the cell cannot repair itself properly, replicate properly, and so on and so forth. And so the mistakes start accumulating and adding up instead of being completely disseminated. And that is actually aging process. Now, there are some other aging process that we humans are unlucky. Like when you have a wound, what happens?
You get a scar.
You get a scar. Well, that is just one mechanism in nature to repair. Because the other mechanism, like some animals, they do have, hey, let's just cut off the arm and grow a new one. Why not do that? why, at what point did biology decided, life decided, cutting off like worms, some worms, you cut them, each half become a full worm.
Yeah.
At what point did the biology decided that if you have a wound here, don't cut it all off, just put some of tough, non-functional but tough tissue, repair it instead of just cutting it off and growing a new one. Do you know when that moment was?
When
Was it a yawn? That's so exciting.
I told you before we started, it has to be an interesting thing because I'm tired.
Okay, this is interesting. So,
Yeah, I think it's getting there.
okay, in life, everything wants to eat everything else. Okay, is that given?
Mm,
Come
everything
on.
wants to eat everything.
Yes, yes. Bacteria want to eat the viruses. Viruses want to eat the bacteria. Plankton wants to eat bacteria. The crustacean wants to eat the plankton. The small fish want to eat crustacean. Big fish want to eat the smaller one, and so on and so forth. And it goes up and down. Everything wants to eat everything else. Now, if every time you have an injury, you have to grow it before you can do your function. Before you grow it, you're eaten.
Yeah,
So eventually, when probably about probably 700 to 800 million years ago, when this competition in the ocean was to a point that everything wanted to eat everything, biology said, "Screw it! I'm not going to grow another arm. I won't have time enough to grow another arm. I need an arm right now. If I wait to grow another arm, I'll be eaten. So I just repair it, even though it's shitty because it's not as good as before. Whereas if I grew a new arm, it's as good as before. I'm just going to repair it before I get eaten.
yeah,
It's faster. Scar is faster than growing an arm. So, and that make us deadly. But deadly being the aging, which lead to a death. If you have enough scars, enough less functional uh, tissue, you're obviously closer to whole system to collapse. But individually, momentarily, it gives you an advantage to fix it fast, even though lower quality. Just patch it and move on.
sure.
Okay, so but that's just as well. Just again, telomere is one scientific explanation for aging. Scoring and the less favorable repair is the other way of our body dealing with the uh, damages that accumulate and become aging process. And obviously, accumulation of the toxins is what you are probably more familiar with, that you have bad food, you bring toxin in your system, and you accumulate. Or there are some biological things that your body produces, things that it cannot get rid of, like in Alzheimer's. Some amyloid is a protein that it it folds in a way, crystallizes in a way that our body cannot take it apart. It accumulate until the neuron dies. These are the three ways biologically, scientifically we age. Now, but the whole process of aging, if you can break it down, in we lose function because our tissue lose function. Like our skin is not doesn't keep its fluid,
College.
and so the tissue is not as viable. Then you have the aging skin, or your eyesight get worse because the muscle that control your lens, the lens itself is not as the proteins are not as good as hydrated as you when you were younger. Your hair, the cells that grow your hair, they they don't have as much reserves to build the same way. So your hair becomes thinner and grows more slowly, or you lose the follicle, and so on and so forth.
The
These are
book that I'm reading is talking about brain power during aging, and it actually says that yes, our aging, like the body factors of aging do play a role in our brain, but a big part of that is also a big part of that is also sleep. So a lack of sleep actually is going to really play into your aging. And the book says that a lot of people think that as you age, you need less sleep, but that's not true. It's that as you age, you get less sleep because of what's going on in your body. It's harder to fall asleep, it's harder to stay asleep, and you also end up waking up earlier. So then, since you have less sleep, your memory is worse. And that's partially why people start mentally aging so fast.
Um, that takes us to another thing, and we definitely should do another podcast just about the sleep. And that's very true. What happens in the sleep is that your body get rid of toxins, regenerate.
Yeah, because a lot of people say like put sleep and rest in the same category, but sleep is actually not really that restful, right? Because you're doing a lot of things inside of your body.
Well, you are shutting the regular function of the body down in favor of other necessary function of the body. So yeah, whatever you want to call it, it's just like you're not doing the regular stuff, you're doing the maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, so um, and that's extremely important, especially um, how long can you live without food? About a month, actually. Most of people can live a month or two without food. Not a problem at all. You quit eating, you have no food. Most of people can live a month or two. How far can you live without water?
3 days.
About 3 days. If you stretch it out, 3 to 5 days. If you truly don't let somebody sleep without absolutely no sleep, it's a very hard thing to do. How long do you think a person can live?
Not long, maybe
Days.
1 week,
Less,
two
definitely
days.
less. As it's like water. You can live without actual true sleep as long as you can live without water. Now,
How long can you live with 1 hour of sleep?
well, you would be surprised that with 1 hour sleep, that how much your body can regenerate. Meaning that you can go through a phase like weeks and so on with 1 hour sleep and so on. So, but with no sleep, you live as long as you can live without water. Okay, so let's come back to that. It's absolutely true. If you get less sleep or less regeneration, all the processes that cause aging are going to kick in faster. That's very true. Now, but let's say at the end of the day, I have not met any person who has lived forever. Everybody has to die, right?
Yeah, and I don't think you would want to live forever.
Well, not the way we do, but that biologic clock that makes us where we are is not really set. It's a process that sets as soon as we are at our peak, it goes down, and um, and that biologic process that gets us practically to the point that things cannot repair themselves. It is something that we can. It's possible to stretch it out much farther than we consider it now. Now, part of that is like, obviously, if you have a hard life, uh, let me tell you something. When I was growing up, um, when people were in their 40s, they look like people now in their 70s. This is a fact. If I look at the picture of my parent in their 40s, or my uncle is in their 40s, they look like people now that are in their 70s, because my mother had to break ice in winter to wash her clothes with hand in winter. No vacuum, no refrigeration, no. See, people has more comfort. They accumulate like medical care and so on. We accumulate less mistake in our aging process. Let's come back to that. So people had much harder life. Like if you go and look at people, even like um, there is a show called Golden Girls,
Yeah.
and that these some elderly people and so on. The actors they played that and the character and so on. they were in 50s. And what that means is just this is something you can observe. So our lifestyle, that accumulation of mistake and so on, is something you can reduce. Now, there's something, if it's a genetic problem, it's maybe with CRISPR and so on, you can overcome that as well. The telomere part is much, much harder to control. The telomere part is the part that those thing at the end of your chromosome gets shorter and shorter, and then eventually the whole thing cannot repair itself or duplicate without mistake. That is I would say, a biological thing that probably we are far, far away from overcoming. In my opinion, that we can overcome a lot of different things, but that telomere part will put the maximum aging for human at 120 years, if not shorter. That means that if you don't fix that problem, which I don't see that being fixed, at least not in my lifetime, that there is a biologic practically endpoint.
Okay, what about this hypothetical?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy theory I believe in. I want to make that clear. There's a
Yeah,
conspiracy.
right.
No. There's a conspiracy theory that very highly important people with a lot of money, let's say like the president of China and Putin,
Mm-hmm.
they were actually like caught having a conversation with each other. And in this conversation, they were talking about aging and about how to prevent aging. And someone like a lip reader or something was saying that they were talking about organ transplants from younger people. So in your 70s, getting like a new heart from someone who's 20 and like all of these organ transplants from people who are much younger. Do you think that would slow down the aging process?
Not at all.
You don't think so? Why not?
Not at all. No, number one, at least at this point, the process of putting a new lung and kidney or heart in you, if your heart is not giving up, it's still much riskier. The risks are much, much more than its benefit. But what about the vessels, the arteries, the nerves that connect to that organ? Are you going to replace them too? No. So I think that is, I'm sure, like Putin and Xi Jinping, they're rich, they're powerful, they want to live forever, and they're just having this conversation. Thanks God, there is a biological limit to these people who have no more inspiration for people than just misery. So death, in my opinion, is sometimes a good thing. As a matter of
Sometimes,
fact,
yeah, it's a relief, even for the
for
person.
everybody. I mean, come on, after a certain point, that and for the same reason, I think it's a good idea to do term limit for politician. So because at certain point, life need to find new ways.
Yeah. And that's a whole other topic that's like more of an opinion-based thing that we don't have to get into. But just seeing my grandma, who's younger than Donald Trump, she doesn't even know how to use her cell phone.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, but imagine if it wouldn't be death, it wouldn't be life, because the first cell made all the other cells, but for to be any other cells, the last generation need to go away. Without, if there wasn't mutation and change and new generation, we would be still one organism cell that have lived on this planet for 5 billion years, but nothing more. So we see death as something scary, but if it wasn't for death, we wouldn't even exist. So the conversation is mute.
But that's cultural anyway. Some cultures don't view death as scary,
Most of cultures do, actually, but
but some cultures don't. You and I both know that.
very few cultures don't, but vast majority of the cultures consider death as something scary. But obviously, I don't. I think death is the natural part of life. We just have to take anything that periphery with the death, that makes it scary away. I mean, death, it's like some famous person said, I'm not scared of death. I have been not there for billions of years before I was born, and it'll be billions of years before after I'm gone. So I wasn't scared of the all the time I wasn't there. Why would I be scared of the all the time that I won't be there? And that's what death is. But pain, discomfort, suffering is the scary part of the death, and that certainly in medicine, that's something we deal with every day.
Yeah, and I feel like as people age, like just in my experience with a lot of older, like with my experience of older people I've dealt with, a lot of them kind of do come to terms with it. Like, for example, I don't really like when she talks about it, but my grandma is so tired of being alive.
Well, you and I, we had this conversation as well about, or let me tell you about my personal hero. My personal hero is Richard Feynman. He comes from a very humble background. He was a self-made genius, meaning his genius didn't come from his certainly some genetic, but he just had the common sense. There's something he said about when he was dying that I thought, that sort of sums it up for me. He said when he got pancreatic cancer, he just, at the end, he couldn't do anything, and he was just, and he told to one of his friends, "I'm so happy I'm going to die only once. It's so boring." I think your grandmother is not tired of living, is tired of boredom.
No, she's tired of living because she's living in pain and she's
Certainly,
living
that part,
alone. Like,
boredom. Yeah.
no, it's not just that she's bored, she's lonely.
Okay. And you
Like,
separate boredom and being lonely, you separate them?
boredom is lack of having activities, lack of things to do. She doesn't even have anyone to relate to her. Like, she has no one that she can say, like, remember in the 30s when this happened? Or do you remember when it used to be like this? She has no one to say that to.
Soon we will have that. Soon everybody will have a AI companion
And she
robot.
won't. She will not have an AI companion. There's no, sorry, forgive me, there's no chance in hell she will have a AI companion. She doesn't even know how to use Netflix.
Well, she doesn't even have to know it. Like in Japan, where the aging is a big process, they have now creating this humanoid robot that they act like a human, they act like a actual person, and the government is using them more and more effectively in elderly home and so on to as a companion for people and so on. So a lot of things are changing, and they
Yeah.
will be in our lifetime. They will be there. So I'm looking forward to the future where aging doesn't come with loneliness and boredom. I'm looking forward to that, and that's
Well, and
something.
also, like we started talking about in the beginning, part of being bored when you age, you have to start that in your early years to
You have to
avoid it.
accumulate activities, hobbies, and so on. All of that is true. Yes, it is. It is. Well, we talked more than the science of aging, but we talked as well a little about the science of the aging. If you guys have any question, just comment on this podcast. If there are specific issues you want us to talk about, and I'm sure this should not be and won't be the last time we talk about uh, aging, science of death, and both of them. It's something that we have to contend with.
Thank you guys for watching. This was Essence of Science, and we talked about aging. I'm Amanda Armagast.
And I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence. Thank you for joining us.